Next on Special Report, Israeli troops poised to attack another Palestinian-controlled city despite criticism both there and here. Are Palestinian terrorists raising money in the U.S. on the internet? And Democrats take aim at another Bush nominee. All of that and more after the other headlines.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lori Dew. There has been another airstrike by Allied planes patrolling the no-fly zone over Iraq. U.S. and British F-16s hit a surface-to-air missile site in southern Iraq. The Pentagon says the strike was in response to threats made against planes that were monitoring the area. It is the 20th strike against Iraqi targets in the southern no-fly zone this year. Well, back here at home, crews are struggling to contain dozens of wildfires in 4 western states. More than 300,000 acres have burned in Oregon, Nevada, California, and Washington state. Oregon's governor has declared a state of emergency to mobilize National Guard troops to fight the fires. Meanwhile, in Nevada, firefighters won a victory containing the Battle Mountain fire. That fire had covered 82,000 acres. An Italian judge has ordered the release of Susanna Thomas, an American student arrested in connection with the violence at last month's G8 summit. Police say she was involved with a group that was believed to be behind some of the violent summer riots. Thomas's parents say their daughter is a pacifist Quaker who would not have taken part in any violent protests. And finally, hundreds of friends and colleagues gathered at the Paramount Studios Theater to honor the late actor Jack Lemmon. Among those who shared the memories of the Oscar-winning legend was Kevin Spacey and Hank Azaria. Next update will be at the bottom of the hour. Coming up, Special Report with Brit Hume.
Welcome to Washington. I'm Brit Hume. Overnight Monday, in their deepest thrust into Palestinian-controlled territory in 10 months, Israeli tanks attacked and leveled targets in the West Bank city of Jenin. Hours after the Israeli attack, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon warned Palestinians they would, quote, lose additional assets if the violence against Israel continues. While Palestinians pledged to escalate their resistance, President Bush urged both sides to restore calm, calling the region, quote, a cauldron of violence. And now there are reports Israeli forces may be moving into other West Bank villages. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the latest from Jerusalem. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Britt. Israeli ground troops have been gathering on the edge of Bethlehem and Beit Jala tonight, but a last-minute order has halted the operation. Sources tell Fox News that the operation may have been halted because of U.S. pressure. Local radio was reporting that Palestinian gunmen were gathering in town squares inside Bethlehem and Beit Jala, preparing for those ground troops, which suggests that if those troops go in, it won't be as clean and easy as it was last night. Earlier, Israel sent tanks into Jenin. The U.S. condemned the latest Israeli actions.
The Israeli incursions into Palestinian-controlled areas are provocative and undermine the efforts of the parties and the international community to defuse the situation and stop the violence.
President Bush blamed the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Mr. Arafat must clamp down on the suicide bombers and on the violence, and the Israelis must show restraint. We've got to break the cycle. In order for there to be any discussions about world peace, it requires a willingness of both sides to come to the table.
But Israel says the tanks it sent to Jenin were an answer to the suicide bomber from this town who blew himself up outside the Wall Street Cafe in Haifa, a showy operation to demonstrate the Israelis mean business and will not tolerate more attacks on their civilians. They withdrew after destroying a Palestinian police headquarters, setting off street demonstrations across the West Bank, and talk of revenge. Gunmen began firing at this neighborhood on the outskirts of Jerusalem at dawn, and at flashpoints where Israelis and Palestinians have faced off for months.
We see this attack as a very escalating act, and it's our right to defend our people.
Palestinian Authority has not lifted a finger to stop these operations against Israeli civilians.
The U.S. is taking what some say is a let-them-bleed approach to the conflict. By sending low-level envoys to meet Israeli and Palestinian leaders, neither side feels any pressure to step back from the brink. It looked as if we were moving one step closer to the brink tonight, Britt, as those ground troops gathered outside Bethlehem. Back to you.
Jennifer, what appears to be the Israelis' plan or policy here? Clearly there's something more at work than simply reacting to individual attacks. Israel appears to be picking these areas where it's either gathering or is moving in with some care. What is the overall Israeli strategy or policy as best you can tell?
Well, as you mentioned, Britt, Israel has been retaliating up until this point. They would have an instance like a suicide bombing where they knew that the suicide bomber had come from a certain town, like from Jenin, and they would react by sending in troops or by sending in helicopters to assassinate members of that group. Now what they want to do is they want to put the Palestinians on the defensive. They want to strike, they want to have these secret operations where they go in and they surprise them here and there. So they're trying to put the Palestinians on the defensive as opposed to just waiting to retaliate every time there's a bombing here in Israel. Britt?
All right, Jennifer, thank you very much. As the violence escalates in the Middle East, the FBI and other law enforcement agencies are targeting extremist websites that promote terrorism. Many of these websites are funded by individuals and companies in the U.S. And as senior correspondent Rita Cosby explains, combating terrorism on the internet is tricky and unfamiliar territory.
Websites like this one come with calls to action. The man's voice here is saying in Arabic, "We have a date with blood." This is one of several websites that law enforcement officials in the U.S. are deeply concerned about, since they are backed by either Islamic, Jewish, or even Hindu terrorist groups. And they are asking for help on U.S. soil, including financial donations.
Terrorist groups have noted is they have a lot more freedom here. Freedom to set up websites, to organize, to collect money.
Terrorism experts estimate that tens of millions of dollars from U.S. citizens go to terrorist groups every year. And in recent months, with violent attacks increasing, particularly in the Mideast, law enforcement officials say they've seen more and more websites showing the damage left behind after terrorist strikes, and statements encouraging extremist groups to carry out further attacks. At least 12 known terrorist organizations, including the Islamic Jihad and Hamas, have been barred from conducting business in the U.S., but detecting them on the web and shutting them down are tough tasks.
Because the websites can pop up, can go back down. They're registered usually under assumed names. It's very hard to find them. They're registered all over the world in countries where there are different registration requirements.
And the U.S. government knows it has to be careful not to infringe on free speech.
The First Amendment tradition requires that we punish acts, not words. And sometimes the line between passionate political advocacy and terrorism is hard to draw.
And that's why law enforcement often can't get involved until the websites show plans for a specific attack or are used as conduits to help obtain fake visas, techniques that are becoming more commonplace. In Washington, Rita Cosby, Fox News.
And coming up next, there's another confirmation battle brewing in the Senate, and the nominee has a very famous last name. More after a break.
Hey, Bev, there's something going on.
Introducing the all-in-one Lexmark X83 for only $199. It copies, scans, and prints with photo quality.
Hey, this is good.
Lexmark, passion for printing ideas. Enjoy something made better with time. Slow roast coffee from Maxwell House. It's worth spending time with.
Refinancing your mortgage may be easier than you think. Just log on to Ditech.com or call 1-800-71-FIX. Today's low fixed rate with 0 points is only 6.875%. With interest rates lower, now may be a great time to get cash or use the equity in your home to consolidate bills. It's smart money from Ditech.com. Apply online or call us at 1-800-71-FIX.
When dentures dream, they see the perfect denture cleanser. One with the stain-fighting power of Effordent and the freshening power of Listerine. Well, little friend, dream no more. It's really here. It's called Effordent Plus. It's extra fresh, and nothing gets your dentures cleaner. Effordent Clean and Listerine Fresh. That's Effordent Plus.
the #1 network for political coverage, covering the deal makers, the debates, and the issues shaping the political landscape.
Simply a matter of negotiating time. He knows he's going to have to budge.
Providing powerful perspective from the Beltway and beyond. Not just politics as usual. The most powerful name in news. Fox News Channel.
Hi there, I'm Edie Donahue. Tomorrow on Fox and Friends, it looks like Condit will campaign again. Is there any way he can pull off a victory? We'll take a look. 7 a.m. Eastern.
A new confirmation battle appears to be brewing in the Senate Labor Committee. At issue is a nominee with a famous last name who opposes a key Democrat's position on some workplace safety issues. Fox News correspondent David Schuster reports.
It is known as ergonomics, or the study of equipment including sewing machines and keyboards that may cause fatigue or injuries. Even though Congress earlier this year scaled back government standards for ergonomics, a few Senate Democrats are predicting another potential battle. The Bush administration's nominee for Labor Department solicitor is 37-year-old lawyer Eugene Scalia. The son of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia opposes ergonomic standards, and labor groups are promising a fight.
600,000 workers are injured every year as a result of this hazard. It's the fastest growing workplace hazard. His record suggests that he wouldn't support any standard or any real action to deal with this problem.
Labor organizations point to articles Scalia has written sharply criticizing a government regulation that would force employers to give workers rest periods and other benefits. This vague and subjective rule, Scalia wrote, would afford little benefit to workers because it is based on thoroughly unreliable science. Supporters of Scalia charge he is being targeted unfairly.
Gene Scalia should be judged on his legal abilities, and there's really no question that he's very well qualified for this position. But with regard to his position on the ergonomics rule, a majority of both houses of Congress rejected the same rule that Gene Scalia appropriately criticized.
Some Republicans have gone a step further. Senate Republican leader Trent Lott has accused Democrats of, quote, jerking around Scalia because his father was part of the Supreme Court majority that ended the Florida election recount. Democrats, including Labor Committee Chairman Ted Kennedy, adamantly deny the charge. And a spokesman added Senator Kennedy has some concerns about Eugene Scalia's stance towards ergonomics-related issues. This is about efforts to protect employees from dangerous working conditions. The Democrats also note that Scalia will be getting a full committee hearing and vote in September. Still, the nomination is starting to generate a lot of attention on both sides. In Washington, David Schuster, Fox News.
This coming November, only 2 states will elect new governors, Virginia and New Jersey, making these high-stakes races for both political parties. Virginia's last 2 governors have been Republicans, and in 1999, Virginia's legislature went Republican for the first time in 100 years. But as chief political correspondent Carl Cameron explains, with less than 3 months till Election Day, it's a Democrat who's now ahead.
There's some serious stomping ahead in the race for governor in Republican-leaning Virginia. Democrat Mark Warner, a millionaire businessman, leads recent polls by about 5 to 7 points.
Voting this election to keep our children home.
But the tone around Warner is about to turn tough.
Hey, Mark, good to see you.
Republican Mark Earley, Virginia's Attorney General, is poised to pounce.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Earley's a conservative, eager to be associated with President Bush's compassion.
I certainly hope that Virginia sends a strong message that we like this new president. You know, my opponent was a big supporter of Clinton Gore and sent him a lot of money over the years.
He's made no secret of his plans to attack Warner.
And he's right out of the liberal side of the National Democratic Party.
A father of 6, emphasizing family values on the campaign trail, Earley is a 14-year veteran of Virginia politics. He's taking a swing at Warner's wealth.
The governor's mansion in Virginia is not for sale. He is trying to buy it. You know, he's probably worth $300 or $400 million, and he said he's going to spend, you know, as much as it takes.
Warner's spent about $750,000 of his own money so far. He has never held office. In 1996, he put $10 million into a U.S. Senate bid and lost. Demonstrators dog him, but he tries to turn the tables, shaking hands, even boasting that 11,000 donors have sent him $7 million, twice what Earley's raised.
We've set fundraising records because people all across the Commonwealth are investing in my campaign. I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of my business success. I think it's a little bit funny that the Republican Party is attacking me for being a successful businessman.
Republicans don't fault Warner's business success, but credit his success in the polls to deception. They say Warner talks conservative in rural Virginia, but moderate in the urban north. Gun politics figures prominently. The National Rifle Association, headquartered in Virginia, has yet to endorse, and Early wants the nod badly. Warner wants to neutralize the issue, vocal on gun rights in the country, but muted on the issue in the city. He'd like the NRA to stay out of the race altogether. In general, Warner's commercials could easily pass for Republican.
As a fiscal conservative, I know the government has to live within its means. So we need to think of innovative ways to help our families without raising taxes.
Early's ads, not quite as slick, touch on several hot-button Virginia issues.
We're keeping the promise by ending the car tax. And as governor, I'll cut the sales tax on food.
Virginia and New Jersey are the only states electing governors this year, so candidates in both parties can expect huge infusions of cash from their national political parties. But in Virginia, Republican Early is expecting a little bit more, not just to level the playing field with Warner, but also because the Republican National Committee chairman is James Gilmore, the outgoing governor of Virginia. In Washington, Carl Cameron, Fox News.
We've got to take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk to University of Virginia government professor Larry Sabato about that race and about his new book on last year's election. Be right back.
Hey, you like delivery pizza? I like delivery pizza.
It's not delivery. It's French.
For fresh baked pizza at home, it's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
For about $1 a bottle, you can buy clean, pure water. Or for about a nickel, you can fill one up yourself. Pure water filters. Pure water made easy.
Got your Pop-Tarts?
Yeah, got it. Got my toaster strudel? Of course. When are you going to get your own toaster strudel?
Pillsbury Toaster Strudel. Like Pop-Tarts, only better. Warm, flaky pastry, juicy fruit filling, and do-it-yourself icing.
So, what do you do with all those Pop-Tarts?
Something better just popped up in your grocer's freezer.
Pillsbury Toaster Strudel.
Today at IBM.com, we're talking about the things on the go a business person needs to keep everything running like a top. Like this little beauty right here. It is the perfect carry-on. In fact, the award-winning IBM ThinkPad i-Series is so well suited to business travelers, I got my buddy Captain Frank, a real-life pilot, to tell us more.
Folks, this is your captain speaking. On the left of the ThinkPad i-Series, you'll see 2 USB ports, and over on the right, a nifty built-in modem. We have a great multimedia machine here, folks, with CD-ROM, stereo speakers, 13.3-inch TFT display. This is a genuine IBM, folks. Intel Celeron processor, 700 megahertz, 64 megs of RAM, under 6 pounds, all for just $999. Plus, folks, you're going first class. Buy this i-Series with the Intel Celeron processor today for just $999, and you can get double the memory free.
Thanks, Captain.
We know you have your choice of computers, so we thank you for choosing IBM.
Do you ever get to hit the eject button?
How would you like to lose that big belly and save big money? Then you need the Abdur system, designed to aerobically burn fat as it flattens your abs in just minutes a day, and it's yours for a fraction of the cost. Look, ab machines strengthen muscles but won't reduce your waist, and some exercises can make your muscles bigger. Only the Abdur's rotating torso trimmer targets your upper abs, lower abs, and obliques, all in one fat-burning circular motion. You'll flatten your stomach in weeks, not months. We guarantee it.
Before I started using the Abdur system, I was very unhappy the way I looked. Ever since I started using the Abdur system, I started seeing immediate results, and I feel so much happier and more confident in everything I do.
These machines cost up to $8,000. The Abdur does the work of all these machines. Millions have sold for 5 payments of only $29.95. But if you call now, we'll lower the price to 5 payments of only $19.95. That's a $50 savings. Plus, you get the Abdovix nutritional guide and motivational video free. We guarantee you'll lose at least 2 inches in just 10 days or your money back. So call now.
The 2000 presidential election was the closest in history, and while it has been settled legally, questions linger. For instance, how much damage did the news media do with their premature calls of the Florida race? Is it true that some Florida votes were never counted, or were those untabulated ballots really votes at all? Who better to try to answer some of those questions than Larry J. Sabato, professor of government at the University of Virginia and director of the university's new Center for Governmental Studies. He is the editor also of the center's new book, Overtime, Election 2000 Thriller, written by him and other contributors. He joins me now from Charlottesville. Welcome, sir. Nice to have you.
Thank you, Brett.
Let me sound you out, first of all, on the race that Carl Cameron was just reporting on, the Virginia gubernatorial race. It does appear by most measures that the Democrat Warner is ahead in a state where Republicans have been, which has been very increasingly friendly to Republicans in recent years. What's going on?
Well, essentially, I think, Brett, it all comes down to the fact that the Republicans have split. The governor of Virginia, Jim Gilmore, who's also the RNC chairman, and the Republican legislature couldn't agree on a budget this year. They never passed budget amendments. It's created a tremendous controversy, and it's allowed a very well-funded and relatively conservative Democrat who has an enormous sized war chest. He's worth $200 to $300 million to slip in the middle. So it's not certain that he can win. After all, this is Virginia, as Carl pointed out. If the positions were reversed, if you had a Republican this far ahead with this much money, you could call the race over. But it's Virginia. The Republicans have a strong organization. It's possible that the Republican could still win, but it's going to be tough. The Democrat's a strong candidate.
All right, thanks, Larry, on that. Let's turn for a moment to Florida and a question I want to ask you. First, let's go to the news media's early calls. We at Fox were certainly in the thick of that. I certainly was. We called Florida for Gore early, prematurely, between 10 minutes to 8 and 8 that night in Eastern time. And then later at 2:16 a.m., we called the state for Mr. Bush and were first to do so. What do you think the damage was done by the early call of the state for Gore? Or do you think, as some have suggested, that the real harm, if there was any, to Mr. Bush's campaign was done by the repeated statements made by the networks at the top of that hour that the polls had in fact closed in Florida when in fact they were still open in the Panhandle? Which in your view was the greater problem?
I think they were both very damaging. In fact, Britt, and let's remember, yes, Fox was guilty, but all the networks were guilty, and I think equally guilty of the same thing. The networks managed to do what the campaign couldn't, and that was unite Americans, because I think they hurt George Bush and the Republicans substantially by calling Florida early for Gore when, as we found out, it was really a cliffhanger. Then in the end, they hurt Al Gore by calling the election for Bush, making Gore appear to be a sore loser when he appealed the election.
Now that call came in the wee hours of the morning and was retracted. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:15, 2:16 in the morning when we made that call. I've always been a little skeptical of the claim that that really did any damage to Mr. Gore, because by the time everybody woke up in the morning, the calls had been retracted, the recount was underway. Weren't we really kind of back to ground zero at that point?
Well, you were, because you were paying close attention. But remember, most people went to bed as soon as the election was called for George Bush.
Or earlier.
I remember, yeah, earlier. I remember
or
calling
earlier.
out. Or earlier, yeah. That's possible. But I think most people waited to see who won. And the early newspapers, at least most of them, had the headline that Bush had squeaked out a victory.
Right. All right, let's turn from, let's look a little farther down the road to this question of whether votes were counted. It got to be a kind of an interesting word game as to whether it was votes, whether they were votes that weren't counted, or simply that they were ballots that were not counted as votes because they were mismarked. How do you see that?
Oh, it's clearly the latter. I'm sorry. There's no question that the legal votes, at least 99.9% of them, were in fact counted. There were tens of thousands, in fact, well over 100,000 votes that were either overvotes, that is, where you had somebody voting for more than one candidate for president, or undervotes, people who didn't vote for president at all. Were there some problems because of machines? Yes. Were there some other difficulties? Sure. But on the whole, people did this to themselves in Florida. You had several thousand people who voted for both Bush and Gore. You had 1,000 people who voted for all 10 presidential tickets in Florida. No butterfly ballot made them do it.
Now, let me ask you a question about that. The reforms that are being instituted in Florida and many other places are designed to make this sort of foolproof, so that you really, if you make a mistake on your ballot, you're going to know it before you leave the ballot box or before you leave the voting booth. You're going to have an opportunity to correct it so that no, even a first-time voter with minimum attention to the instructions is going to be able to cast a ballot that will be properly done and therefore counted. Question about that. As someone who is a student of government, is this an altogether good thing? I'm not suggesting there ought to be a poll tax or a literacy test or anything of the kind, but ought there not be some minimum requirements of diligence and care on the part of voters? Should we be, in fact, making voting so easy that it's kind of idiot-proof?
I don't think so, personally. But I'll tell you, Brett, I don't care what they do, and Florida's got all these new rules, other states are getting them. It's not going to make any difference. Even if you have second chance voting, which is what you're talking about, in fact, you will still have many, many people, probably millions, making a statement by voting for more than one candidate or refusing to vote for a presidential candidate, and that's still going to be legal. It's every American's right to vote incomprehensibly.
And every American's right to screw up their ballot unintentionally, I assume you're saying.
Precisely.
All right. Now,
absolutely.
Well, what does that do to the argument then that the will of the voter or the intent of the voter should be somehow discerned so that every single ballot is counted as a vote?
Well, it should not happen, and it's never going to happen. And the people who say that really haven't studied voters as closely as they should. There are many people, millions of people, who make these incomprehensible statements, who are trying to say something that may make no sense to you or to me.
Or to a vote counting machine.
Or a vote counting machine. Right. They have the right to do it, and they will continue to do it.
And your view is that we shouldn't come in and try to divine their intent, right?
Absolutely not. It's insane. No one can do that.
Larry Sabato, good to have you. Best wishes with your book. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot.
We have to take a break here for news headlines. When we come back, though, find out where one straight-talking senator's political action committee is spending its money. You may be surprised. The Grapevine is next.
What is this?
Introducing the all-in-one Lexmark X83. For only $199, it copies, scans, and prints with photo quality and will change the way you look at printers forever. Lexmark, passion for printing ideas.
Take away the sexy clothes and underwear and put on the silkiest thing of all, Caress Silkening Body Lotion. It can make every woman feel even more beautiful. Before you dress, caress.
Did you get everything?
Yep. They even had his school supply list.
Pencils?
Number 2s, 10-pack.
Backpack?
At Staples, we have teacher-supplied back-to-school lists, so you'll find everything in one place at everyday low prices.
Honey, what's that?
It's a multi-function flatbed all-in-one printer, copier, fax machine, scanner.
Not on the list.
School supply lists. Staples. Yeah, we've got that.
For a book report or something.
John Mapes is 33, mortgage, married, 2 great kids. He wants to protect his family with a $500,000 term life insurance policy. What do you think it'll cost him? $100 a month? 60? 40? Actually, none of the above. John can get a $500,000 policy from a highly rated insurer for right around $17 a month. His secret? SelectQuote. SelectQuote is impartial. They'll search the pick of insurers like these to give you a choice of your best prices. SelectQuote has great savings on term life for women, too. John's wife, Carrie, can get a $400,000 policy for under $13 a month. SelectQuote has helped make term life insurance affordable for hundreds of thousands of people since 1985. How about you? Just call this number or visit SelectQuote.com.
Tonight, is your backyard a deadly minefield? Better watch your step on the Fox Report with Shepard Smith. Then they got off the hook, but boy did we get soaked. Why did the Whitewater investigation end up costing taxpayers $50 million? We'll ask independent counsel Robert Ray on the O'Reilly Factor. It's the most powerful primetime lineup in sight, only on the Fox News Channel. Tonight, the UN Conference on Racism, why Bush's stance may not give him a standing ovation. Then, John Walsh shares some powerful new theories on the Chandra Levy mystery.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lori Dew. The first Bridgestone-Firestone tire defect case to go to trial continued today in Texas with graphic testimony from a man injured in an accident involving a Ford Explorer. A Texas family is suing the tire maker for the rollover accident. Meanwhile, Florida police are blaming Firestone for another accident that killed one person last week. A witness says the tire tread separated before the driver lost control. Turbulent times for folks who travel on and work for Midway Airlines. The North Carolina-based carrier has filed for bankruptcy, cut many flights, and says it will lay off half its workers. The company says low airfares and high fuel prices, as well as a drop in business traffic, are to blame for its financial troubles. No more monkeying around for Helena Bonham Carter unless Hollywood shows her the money. At the London premiere of The Planet of the Apes, the English actress complained about spending long hours in makeup. Carter says they would have to pay her lots more for a sequel. And finally, a reality check for Miss America. Pageant directors are adding a Survivor-like segment where contestants not chosen as finalists will vote for who they think should wear the crown. This year's pageant will be held September 22nd. The Fox Report with Shepard Smith is coming up, as always, at the top of the hour, but now Special Report with Brit Hume continues. Brit will have all the latest from the political grapevine. That's straight ahead here on Fox.
And now the most illuminating 2 minutes in television, the latest from the political grapevine. John McCain's Political Action Committee, Straight Talk America, spent more than $1.1 million in the first 6 months of this year, but very little of it flowed to other political candidates who are the normal beneficiaries of political action committees. Instead, the Capitol Hill newspaper Roll Call reports much of the money went to pay salaries and expenses of a team of advisors and consultants who were also active in McCain's presidential campaign. Indeed, Roll Call said McCain's Political Action Committee, quote, spent more hard dollars on overhead costs than any other leadership PAC associated with a member of Congress, end quote. Top McCain advisor John Weaver, for example, collected $15,000 a month. That's more than all the money McCain contributed to other candidates put together. McCain, of course, is considered a leading congressional advocate of campaign finance reform. The United Nations panel on race is attacking the United States record on racism and strongly hinting that this country should impose a moratorium on the death penalty. The UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, based in Geneva, Switzerland, noted what it called, quote, a disturbing correlation between race, both of the victim and the defendant, and the imposition of the death penalty, end quote, in the U.S. It said 54% of those on death row in the U.S. are from a minority background, compared to 20% of the overall population. The UN apparently did not try to determine what the percentage of minorities is within the criminal population. The study is a prelude to that UN conference on racism to be held this month in South Africa, which the U.S. has threatened to boycott. In Nitro, West Virginia, the police, whose headquarters was downstairs, didn't know what was happening elsewhere in the building. Neither did the little kids whose daycare center was downstairs, or the senior citizens who ate in the cafeteria. But the Nitro Community Center was home to a cloning laboratory where a former state legislator named Mark Hunt spent nearly $500,000 on an effort to have his infant 10-month-old son Andrew, who died after surgery for a heart defect, cloned. But the Charleston Gazette, which broke the story, reports that Hunt abandoned the effort after the FDA got wind of it and started asking questions. President Bush took his home for the Heartland working vacation on the road Tuesday as he kicked off a 2-day swing through Colorado and New Mexico. Mr. Bush will mix family and community-oriented events with fundraising for Republican candidates. As senior White House correspondent Jim Angle tells us, on this day, the president cleared trails in Rocky Mountain National Park and spoke at a YMCA picnic about the importance of character education.
In the natural beauty of Rocky Mountain National Park, President Bush joined a group of YMCA volunteers and park rangers to thin the underbrush that makes forest fires uncontrollable and even more destructive.
What about this one? Sure, you take that one off.
The federal government has been slow to embrace such efforts, even when governors in the West, where most wildfires occur, were urging more aggressive action. Mr. Bush is clearly sympathetic.
And I know there's some in our country that want to just, let the forest fall apart. We're not going to let that happen in this administration.
In fact, the Bush administration has just agreed to give the governors a bigger say and join them in more aggressive fire prevention. Last year, wildfires burned more than 8.4 million acres, mostly in the West. And Mr. Bush says we can do a better job of containing fire with better forest management.
We're going to maintain them, and we're going to make sure that if there is a fire, it does as little damage as possible.
This stop also allowed the president to highlight one aspect of his environmental policy that is not controversial, putting more money and effort into the national parks.
This thing is really heavy.
The efforts of volunteers like those the president joined are a big help, but Mr. Bush also wants to spend $5 billion to completely eliminate the maintenance backlog at the nation's parks within 5 years.
We better get some barbecue, don't you think?
He also had lunch with kids attending the YMCA summer camp here and talked to them about values. The president has a bigger role than just pushing legislation, he said, as he applauded efforts to teach what the YMCA does.
And the vision is that we can teach our children right from wrong. And we can teach them good, sound values so that when they get older, they'll make the right choices in their life.
After this, the president trades natural beauty for a different kind of greenery. In Denver, he headlines a fundraiser for Senator Wayne Allard and Governor Bill Owens. Republicans hope to raise $1.5 million. With the president in Estes Park, Colorado, Jim Angle, Fox News.
Fox News has confirmed that Democratic Congressman Gary Condit of California will be holding his annual fundraiser called Condit Country on October 27th. A longtime Condit supporter says this year's event may be used to measure how much support the congressman retains in his home district. Past fundraisers have drawn more than 5,000 supporters. Condit has not yet spoken to the media or his constituents about the Chandra Levy investigation or if he plans to run for re-election. The 1998 Good Friday peace deal was a historic power-sharing accord that basically got the different sides in the conflict in Northern Ireland to work together. The details were to be worked out later, and it now seems the devil is in the detail of getting the Irish Republican Army to give up its guns. Fox News correspondent Amy Kellogg has the story.
Violence still flares up in Northern Ireland. The peace process is a work in progress, and it has once again stalled. At issue, arms. The Irish Republican Army still has a formidable stockpile. Less than 2 weeks ago, the IRA, which together with the party Sinn Féin has led the struggle for a united Ireland, finally agreed to destroy weapons such as these, seen in this training video. But because the deal didn't offer a specific timetable for destruction, the main Protestant party, the Ulster Unionists, rejected it. Now the IRA has taken it back, and government officials worry about the consequences.
I'm afraid that withdrawing from an agreement which took 2 years to arrive at, only 5 days after Republicans declared it as historic, can only play into the hands of those skeptics.
Add to this that 3 suspected IRA members were arrested Monday in Colombia for allegedly training terrorists, and you've got some people wondering if the IRA really means peace.
The IRA is founded on the philosophy of the gun. They weren't founded on an ideological track. They're founded on the belief is that you get guns and you drive the British out of Ireland by force, by the use of arms. So for an organisation like that to give up their guns is like asking them to give away their very reason for being.
Kevin Toulis says there is the concern that if the IRA gives up its guns, more militant members will join violent splinter groups, including one called the, quote, Real IRA, which continues to set off bombs like this one in West London earlier this month. The parties now have 6 weeks to work things out.
If the different parties give up talking to one another, then the Northern Ireland government that was born out of the peace accords will die, and Britain will reimpose direct rule. Now, experts say in the short term this might not really have an impact on life in Northern Ireland, but it's gotten to the point where if things don't keep going forward, they will inevitably at some point go backwards, and possibly in a violent way. In London, Amy Kellogg, Fox News.
Our interview last time with Sky News U.S. correspondent Keith Graves generated a lot of email. We asked Graves in the interview why so many Western journalists working in Israel end up portraying the Palestinians in an equal or more positive light than Israelis. He says he and other reporters have found the Israelis to be arrogant and convinced of their superiority over the Palestinians. Bernard Bass of Dresher, Pennsylvania writes, the Israeli Jews are arrogant. Can you blame them when so many of their families were simply eliminated in Europe and the Soviet Union? They are gutsy and not the groveling, non-fighting, praying Jews of old who went quietly to their deaths. It won't happen again. Stuart Kaufman of Great Neck, New York says, let Mr. Graves preach to someone else. Jews are tired of being told how to die gracefully by self-righteous Gentiles. Joyce Hart, who says she's driven through the West Bank and other areas of Israel, writes, the Jews work hard, are smart, clean, and basically peaceful. Many Palestinians are dirty and don't work. That whole area was nothing until Israel became a nation in 1948. David Margolin of Boston writes that he was one who said Keith Graves is bigoted. Quote, I'm disappointed you could invite such a blatant anti-Semite onto your show. But viewers such as W.J. McGrath of Pocono Summit, Pennsylvania, defended Graves. As a retired soldier, I can assure you that Mr. Graves' comments have been echoed, albeit sotto voce, by those dealing with Israelis. The charges of anti-Semitism leveled any time that criticism of Israel is voiced has over the years stifled honest discourse. M.L. Harb of Knoxville, Tennessee wrote, any reasonable person knows that there is always two sides to a story. It was refreshing to hear the other side for a change. Georgianne Johnson, who says she doesn't believe she has prejudices in either direction, writes, quote, I frequently wonder if I am the only one who sees many of the actions of the Israelis as deliberate provocations, perhaps designed to stir up further unacceptable Arab behavior for yet more condemnation from the West. Thanks for the balanced coverage. And Al Reiter of Silver Spring, Maryland, thought the interview told more about journalists than journalism. What a wonderful insight into the means by which these reporters determine their approaches to the news. They shape it to accord how they feel about their news subjects should act. Don't change that channel, folks. The Fox All-Stars are up next.
Rain, stop. Traffic, yield. CD, play. Climate control, on.
The Infinity Q45 with voice-activated controls.
Lights, green.
The rest of the world should be so accommodating. The new Q from Infinity.
August is hot. Really hot. 600 miles an hour hot. 200,000 horsepower hot. 1 million tons hot. From monster trucks to superjets, massive subs and turbo tanks. It's a month of heavy-duty metal that's too hot to handle. Heavy Metal Month on Modern Marvels on the History Channel. Check your local listings.
Refinancing your mortgage may be easier than you think. Just log on to Ditech.com or call 1-800-71-FIX. Today's low fixed rate with 0 points is only 6.875%. With interest rates lower, now may be a great time to get cash or use the equity in your home to consolidate bills. It's smart money from Ditech.com. Apply online or call us at 1-800-71-FIX.
Tonight, lay off Israel or else. Why the Conference on Racism could be in real jeopardy on Hannity and Cole. Then,
I think we'll be lucky if we find it, and I think we'll probably find a body.
John Walsh with a grim prediction for Chandra on The Edge with Paula Zahn. It's the most powerful primetime lineup in sight, only on the Fox News Channel. Tonight, explosive situation underfoot, backyard bombs. What you don't know could hurt you. Then, Whitewater, a waste of your time and tax dollars. Robert Ray fills us in on what went wrong.
Some analysis now from Jeff Birnbaum, Washington Bureau Chief of Fortune Magazine, Bill Salmon, White House correspondent of the Washington Times, and Mort Kondracki, executive editor of Roll Call, Fox News contributors all. Jennifer Griffin said at the end of her report out of Jerusalem just a little while ago that the U.S. seems to be taking what some say is a let-them-breed approach to the continuing conflict over there, and that by sending only low-level envoys to meet Israeli and Palestinian leaders, it creates a situation in which neither side feels any pressure to step back from the brink. That, of course, a view reflected, I presume, by Israeli officials over there. What about that? What about the administration's approach? This is a very hands-off approach at a time when you have what some may regard as an emergency over there. Does the administration have other options? Are there better options?
Yeah, well, I don't think that Bush wants to get involved in being an intermediary between Sharon and Arafat, particularly because he doesn't trust Arafat to deliver on his promises, and he doesn't want to diminish his own stature by failing. Right. Okay. But there are things he can do, and one of the first thing he can do is to start naming names. I mean, this business about the cycle of violence, it's baloney. It's not a cycle of violence. It is the Palestinians and the Palestinian Authority is complicit in the whole thing, is orchestrating violence for the purpose of attracting international support.
Now, you are convinced that if Yasser Arafat wanted to turn off these suicide bombs, he could turn them all off, or most of them, or what?
He could arrest all the people that he let out of jail, the Islamic Jihad and the Hamas leadership that is plotting these attacks, and instead of negotiating with them, to form a government with them. I mean, he looks like he's forming a government of national unity to wage long-term war against Israel.
But Bush has said today and in recent days that Arafat has to do a better job of reining in these people. Even though they might not be completely under his control, he's got to step up to the plate and get them under control. And I think that...
He's been saying that now for a while. Arafat seems not to be paying a whole lot of attention.
Right, but you talked about whether we're disengaged and whether we should be more engaged in the process. Well, remember when Clinton at Camp David was extraordinarily engaged and tried to broker this deal, came up with the best possible deal that Arafat could have ever wanted. Arafat walked away from it. So the last time the U.S. invested a lot of political capital in brokering a deal between these two sides, it didn't work. The region descended into the worst violence in years, and Bush is now looking at that and saying, is this where I want to go? Do I want to go down that path?
No, I don't think he is going to go down that path in particular, because he doesn't want to fail. But I think that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that we're being let in on. In particular, I think the State Department is working closely with President Mubarak of Egypt, trying to allow him to be the sort of leading edge of efforts to mediate, so that Egypt may well become a U.S. surrogate to try to bring the two parties together. There's been a lot of talk about even Egyptian soldiers being put into the Middle East to try to bring some sanity. And I'm not sure that'll work, but I think that's one step behind what's going on.
Well, because the Egyptians are, in a pinch, the Egyptians are going to side with the Palestinians. I mean, you look at this peace between Egypt and Israel is a cold peace. Al-Akhbar and Al-Ahram, the major newspapers in Egypt, are constantly spewing out all kinds of anti-Semitic, pro-Hitler, propaganda that keep the Arab public agitated. I mean, there has been no effort on the part of the Egyptians to make a strong peace with Israel.
Morton, you put your finger on what you believe the administration thinks are the risks of plunging in a very public and formal way. What are the risks of appearing to be standing back?
Well, looking impotent, it seems to me that what you do is you say to Arafat, if you don't stop this violence, there are going to be consequences, and the consequences are that we're going to
stand aside where Israel mounts attacks on you?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's an all or nothing proposition. I think Bush not only is saying things publicly about Arafat, but you notice today the State Department said that it was inappropriate for the Israelis to mount these recent strikes and that this was a provocative move. So they're being fairly even-handed about telling both sides to rein in the violence. You know, this whole discussion last night and today was about how the press is portraying the two sides. And I do agree, I don't agree with everything that guy said, but I do agree that the press does portray as a little bit pro-Palestinian. But I think that the administration has not been. I don't think so far.
All right. Yeah. We got to stop that there. Jeff, you got a last observation you want to make there?
I think we can. I'll pass.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. We'll have more about Gary Condit and his options after a break.
How many 1-liter bottles would you have to buy
to equal the amount of water you get from one pure faucet mount. About 378. Pure faucet mount filters. Pure water made easy.
30 love.
Everyone needs more energy. Whether you're a pro
Great backhand.
or just acting like one.
Nice shot. She's playing.
Start your day with Grape Nut cereal. It's energy for living.
You know Bridgestone sells tires for cars like this, and this, and this. But now we're having a sale on tires for cars like this, and this. Introducing the Insignia SL, a new Bridgestone tire for cars like yours. On sale now during the Insignia sale. You can even take them for a free 30-day test spin. The distinction is Bridgestone, so see your participating Bridgestone retailer or Firestone Tire and Service Center.
Chills, the edge of your seat, that lump in your throat. Dish on Demand takes movie watching soaring to new heights. Share the experience with the people who mean the most. Tonight, pick up your remote instead of your car keys. Order a pay-per-view movie from Dish on Demand.
Did you see that?
The equipment that the Navy has is state-of-the-art.
A lot of the equipment that I work with is leading technology.
I spent most of my Navy career working in satellite communications.
I actually went through 15 months of school.
Been through very extensive training in mathematics, physics, chemistry.
They train you to be the best, and they expect you to be the best.
It probably would have cost me around $25,000 for the total amount of training I went through.
My parents were very excited that the Navy was going to pay for 4 years of college.
College professors come aboard to teach us while underway. I am 2 courses away from my criminal justice degree.
What you've seen is just part of the story. Call this number now for your free 12-minute video and see how the Navy can jumpstart your life. Check out the jobs, training, and money for college that are waiting for you.
My Navy experience allowed me to step right into a respectable and fun job.
Navy, accelerate your life.
There's a simpler way to save for the things you want. The Orange Savings Account from ING Direct. Everyone gets the same high 4.4% rate. With no minimums, no fees, and without changing banks. It's the simple way to make the most of your money. Call 1-800-ING Direct for great rates on savings, loans, and mortgages. 1-800-ING Direct.
Back with our panel now, and time for our occasional look in on the saga of Gary Condit. Nothing has changed in the Chandra Levy investigation that we know about, but Mr. Condit's chief of staff has defended him, and he himself has issued a statement in the last several days in which he has said that it was unfair for those newspapers in his hometown to call on him to quit without waiting to hear his side of the story. Right. They probably would argue that they waited long enough, but it's a good question. Is his situation simply deteriorating by the day? Is in fact the bleeding stopped? What?
Well, I think his 2 hometown newspapers to both call for him to resign is devastating. And the public there has got to be deeply disappointed in this guy. This is a person with 2 personas. I mean, one that he had at home, which was, sort of a hardworking, upstanding family man, and his persona in Washington, D.C., which was a, playboy by night in Adams Morgan with mistresses and all that kind of stuff. His Washington persona is not going to play well in Modesto, California.
I think the newspapers were models of restraint. They waited more than 100 days to issue these editorials. That's plenty of time for this guy to have had a heart-to-heart with his wife and kids, which he's now saying he didn't have time to talk to his wife and kids. I mean, how long does it take to have a conversation with your family when you're embroiled in the middle of this unbelievable crisis? And it seems like Condit is taking the strategy, hey, I'll fight against the media. That'll make me a hero. I'll make the media the bad guy, and somehow that will, absolve me, which is ridiculous.
Part of his popularity, Jeff, has stemmed from the fact that this is thought to be a relatively conservative, or at least a centrist political district, and that he was very much in his votes and all in sync with his district. Does that continue to be the case?
No. In fact, the White House, No. In fact, the White House which used to think of Condit as a pretty reliable voter, one that they could reach out occasionally and get for Bush's priorities. But that was the last time.
Right.
Yeah, his name has not showed up on with the Republicans on anything since, in particular the liability issue on the Patient's Bill of Rights. And the White House is not expecting that he will vote against the wishes of the Democratic leadership, in part to protect himself as best he can by trying to be the loyalist he really never was before to the Democratic Party.
Himself from?
Well, trying to find allies in his own party, which he really didn't have a whole lot of before because of his mixed voting record. Now he needs all the friends he can get, and as a result, he is no longer a vote with the Republicans anymore. He will always be with the Democrats.
This has a certain familiarity to it, doesn't it?
Right.
And I think you can probably tell us what familiarity it has. Bill Clinton, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So,
well, you know, Condit was so conservative as a Democrat that he was one of the people on the short list that Bush had when he was putting together his team. For a Democrat, he had to have sort of a token Democrat on in his cabinet. He was one of the people they were considering.
Agriculture Secretary. That's right.
Right, which no longer the case. And this also preserves his options if he were to leave the Congress of the United States, which is perfectly possible, even though we hear that he may run for re-election, that he's having a fundraiser.
What about
I'm not sure that we can believe that. But if he does
well, he's supposed to have the fundraiser.
Right. Well, he may have the fundraiser, but as for running for re-election, I'm not sure. But if he shows that he's a loyalist Democrat, then maybe he might have a future as a lobbyist in this town.
The fundraiser, I think, is keeping up appearances. The worst thing he could do right now is not have the
probably
fundraiser.
Needs the money, too. And there's a lot of flexibility about what you can do with that money, right?
Well, yeah, that's true.
On clothes, though.
Well, no, but you can spend it on legal fees.
Legal fees.
Yeah,
all right. That's all for the panel. Stay tuned, folks, for a look at why it's fun to stay at the YMCA. Be right back.
What makes a great performance? Years of hard work, attention to detail, a formula that's helped Oppenheimer Global Fund beat 98% of its competition over the past 5 years. Oppenheimer Funds, the right way to invest.
So, what is this?
Sweet. Cool. Introducing the all-in-one Lexmark X83. It copies and scans in high definition, prints with 2400 DPI photo quality, and will change the way you look at printers forever.
Hey, this is good.
The all-in-one X83. For only $199. Lexmark. Passion for printing ideas.
Oh, I get it.
There's a way to remove dust and not just move it around. Swiffer cloths have lift and lock pockets to help attract and trap dust and dirt with the swipe of a hand. The Swiffer system cleans even hard-to-reach places. And when you're done, just throw the dust away. When Swiffer's the one, consider it done.
When we were deciding where to build this plant, we wanted quality of life and plenty of electric power. This area is real nice, but the electric co-op is pretty small. Not a problem. They're part of this group of over 500 co-ops nationwide, Touchstone Energy. Our co-op worked with us to make sure we got the right power and the right price. So we built the plant, and we get to live here.
And we shine as one.
Preparation, focus, the strength to perform under all conditions. That's how Oppenheimer Quest Balanced Value Fund beat 99% of its competition over the past 5 years. Oppenheimer Funds, the right way to invest.
Tonight, is your backyard a deadly minefield? Better watch your step on the Fox Report with Shepard Smith. Then they got off the hook, but boy did we get soaked. Why did the Whitewater investigation end up costing taxpayers $50 million? We'll ask independent counsel Robert Ray on the O'Reilly Factor. It's the most powerful primetime lineup in sight, only on the Fox News Channel.
Hi there, I'm Edie Donahue. Tomorrow on Fox and Friends, it looks like Condit will campaign again. Is there any way he can pull off a victory? We'll take a look, 7 a.m. Eastern.
Finally, the president was made an honorary lifetime member of the YMCA of the Rockies. The presentation came on the stage after that speech you saw earlier to a group of YMCA campers. But as you'll see here, it almost didn't happen. Watch.
The people of America are so fantastic and so loving and so decent. May God bless you all.
It's all right. It's nice to meet you. Appreciate you. If you could just wait here.
I will.
Thank you.
I got the picture. I didn't listen to what they told me to do.
That's fine.
That's a special report for this time. Please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned for news. Fair and balanced as always.